In today's video, we'll be looking at a sample case study of a couple that we'll call Mike and Mary. Now, Mike and Mary are skeptical that Social Security will pay out their full benefit when they retire in 10 years at age 67. So they want to take a look at what does it look like if they receive their full benefit versus a percentage of the benefit or no benefit at all. So that's what we're going to look at in today's video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos going forward. Everybody, I'm Justin Ancona with Legacy Wealth Advisors, and our goal is to guide and educate families to steward their legacy for generations. Okay, so jumping right into this case study here. So you see here we've got Mike and Mary, and both of them are 57 years old, and we've got them both working. Mike is making $150,000 a year, and Mary is making $300,000 a year. And so I want to jump right into the goals that they have and their retirement period. So we're first looking at, as I mentioned at the start, they're planning out to retire in 10 years at age 67. And they want to have this money lasting into their early to mid-90s. So we've got, for planning purposes, we're planning out to age 92 for Mike and age 94 for Mary. Typically, we plan for the wife to live longer just based on life expectancy. And so we've got the retirement period here at 28 years. And if we look at what the goals they have during this period, we'll jump ahead here. And we've got a base budget of $120,000 per year in retirement. So starting 10 years from now, they've also got a want. They'd like to do quite a bit of traveling in the first 10 years of retirement. They want to do a substantial amount because they think they'll be more active, more interested to travel. And so we've set aside a budget of $40,000 per year for those first 10 years in retirement. And then we've also got healthcare expenses. Since they are working to age and past age 65, a lot of that, the big expense for healthcare will be covered by Medicare. And so they still will have costs, but we estimate that to be about $10,000 per year in retirement. And so moving along here of looking at, what is funding, what do they have to fund these goals that they have here. So you'll see, this is looking at the full Social Security scenario. In just a little bit here, we'll look at the comparison of full Social Security compared to the reduction, which we're going to look at if they had their benefits reduced by 20%, so dropping it down to 80% of this amount. We'll also look at no Social Security, so having nothing coming in from Social Security. How does that impact their situation? So right now we've got both of them having that full Social Security, and then we've got the investment assets in here as well. So for what they have, they've got $1.9 million in liquid assets. A lot of that's in their, what they've built up from working over the years in their 401k. So Mary's got $1 million, Mike has $500,000 in his 401k, and then they've accumulated in a trust or a brokerage account $400,000. And note over here, they are for the next 10 years, they're maxing out their 401k. So we've got the maximum going in for both of them. And in addition to what they're putting in, they have company matches that are being contributed into their 401ks as well. And so that's the liquid assets, what they've got here. They have a home, but you'll see we're not using the home to fund their goal. Or to fund their retirement, because ultimately they have to live there. For some clients, we might say, hey, if you're planning to downsize sometime in the future, we may take a portion of that and put it towards retirement if they've got a big home and they expect proceeds from that to go towards retirement. But in this case, for Mike and Mary, we're not planning on that. They do have a mortgage on their home, so their mortgage is $200,000. They've got a rate of 4%. We're planning on that being paid off before retirement, so they can go into retirement completely debt-free. Now, when we continue along here, we've got and in a minute we'll get into the projections, but you'll see the net worth laid out here. They're at just at 2.3 million, and that includes, the liquid assets, the home, and then the mortgage that they have. And so all in 2.3 million is where they're at. Now, if we jump along into, we call this the what if, because there's different scenarios we can look at and kind of change different things. And so this first column here, this is where we've got that full Social Security. So that's if they do receive their full benefit, if there's changes to the current situation for Social Security to make that available to them at age 67. Now, based on their concern, they said in 2033, 2034, they've been hearing things that the Social Security Trust Fund potentially could go to zero, and then only what's being paid into Social Security by workers is being paid out to those who are receiving. And so at that time, the estimate is that it's maybe 80% of the benefit, that you'd receive 80%, so it'd be a 20% reduction. So you'll see down here, we've got their Social Security in here. The current, again, is 46. If we reduce that by 20%, this is maybe what they could be looking at when they're taking their benefit 10 years from now. And so that's with that 20% reduction. And then there's this third scenario here, and we'll drill into each one of these. And actually, I've got to update this here so this is consistent across the board. So we want each budget to be the same to start, and then we can make adjustments as we go. But this is looking here. This third column here is if we have no Social Security, we've got the 120,000 budget, and then 100% reduction, so they're not receiving any Social Security. And actually down here, this is something we'll take a look at in a bit, but again, just to start, we'll look at it all the same, zero extra savings for what we're putting in. But in a bit here, we'll take a look at that. So just to compare apples to apples on what we're looking at, full Social Security, showing they're in that above confidence zone, 91%. I'll talk a little bit to what that means here in a second. 86% when we reduce their benefit down to 80% of what their full amount is. And then if they don't get any, if they receive zero Social Security, which we wouldn't expect, that'd be a very conservative approach. We'd still expect them to receive something, but they'd be down in this 59% success rate below the confidence zone. So before we make any adjustments here, I do want to kind of show you what these mean when we're looking at projections, and what does it really, will you have enough, or how much will be left over in these three different scenarios at the end of your plan in the early 90s for Mike and Mary. So let's drill into these here. So first, for this initial, the full Social Security, we're in this above confidence zone, 91%. We can expect that the results are going to look good. So if we have average markets, the 500, this is looking at 1,000 different market trials. And if we're in that middle area with maybe a 6.87% per year return, they may be left with 4.9 million at the end of their plan. If we now take a look at below average markets, so if we bump this down to the 750th worst case out of 1,000, the return might be more in the 5.3% range, and they're still in really good shape, still having 2 million left over that they would be passing on to their beneficiaries. And then again, this is really where we start to see, even in worst case markets, I'm going to drop this even lower, the 910 out of 1,000 worst case, maybe an average of 3.6% return, they still have money left over. So their money is outliving them. They're not outliving their money, which is ultimately our goal. And so that's this first scenario here. Let's look into this second one, where this could potentially be a realistic scenario if their benefit is reduced by 20% and they only receive 80% of their benefit. They'd be in this 86% in the confidence zone. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. So here we go. When we're looking at this scenario here, we're looking at the average. So maybe the 500th out of 1,000, we're looking at an average return of 7.3%. And in this case, we're showing that they could be left over with $4.2 million at the end of their plan. So in the average, they're in good shape. Same thing with the below average. I'll skip right over that because we'll still be in a good spot. Now, if we go to this 900, or let's maybe go to exactly what we were looking at for the previous scenario, we're looking at the 910 worst case out of 1,000, and this is where this plan maybe struggles a little bit more compared to the other one, where anything in that 900 or better out of 1,000 trials, we were still having money left over. Now in this case here, we show that the money could go to zero in 2054, and so they'd be running out. That'd be sometime in their 80s. The end of the plan is 2060. This would be in 2054, so it'd be somewhere in their late 80s, where if we did have a more bottom, poor results or poor returns, we could see the money going to zero if they didn't make any adjustments or tweaks to their plan, their spending, in that time, but they kept everything as is. So that's this scenario here again. If we're looking at average, and even I will show this one. This is one I didn't show, but this would be a below average sequence. They'd still have money left over in this case here. Now, looking at the no Social Security, this is really where we'd have to say, hey, if you're not receiving Social Security, we'd have to make adjustments. We'd have to make adjustments potentially to the spending, and we could look at that if you drop the spending, or we make adjustments to, hey, in this 10 years before retirement, we have to accelerate what we're saving, and so we could add additional savings to maybe increase the results. But this is to show you what this looks like in the same hypotheticals, the trials that we're looking at. So if we're looking at an average scenario in the 500 case out of 1,000, maybe somewhere in this 6% return, we would still have money left over. So when things are, if we have average returns, we'd be in okay shape. We'd be good. They're not running out of money in that scenario. Now, as soon as we go to below average returns, bottom 25% or 750th worst case out of 1,000, this is when we start to see that the money can go to zero before the end of the plan. So here it's in year 2053 that we see the money potentially going to zero. And then we look at a 900 out of 1,000, bottom 10%, and in something like this, scenario like this, the money could go to zero in 2044. And so for this reason, we wouldn't want to just stick with what we're doing, but we'd want to make adjustments. And so just to kind of do a little bit of pulling some different levers, let's take a look here and see if we reduced, if they said, hey, we really expect not to receive Social Security, it's not looking good, but we still want to retire in the same year, what do we have to do? So let's take a look at some different budgets here. If we drop them down to 84,000 spending per year, and then we also said, what does it look like if you were to add an additional 50,000 in savings, and we do that into for the purposes of what we're planning for here, maybe do that into a taxable account, their trust, since they're maxing out their 401ks. We'll maybe put this into the trust. Let's take a look at what this does, how this impacts the plan here. Okay, so we see that bumped up from in the mid 50s to now we're in that 83%. We're getting into that confidence zone, so really a much better spot for them to be in. And you know, ideally we want to be in this above confidence zone, this blue zone, so that even, you know, when we're getting into these cases of you know, worst case markets, bottom 10%, we're still in a good spot, and it's just planning for you know, to be more conservative, planning for the worst, but hoping for things to be better than that. So you could see how a couple like Mike and Mary could leave this feeling more confident, prepared, and at peace going into retirement because they've planned ahead for these different scenarios. Now, if you made it this far and you like this video, consider hitting the like button. And thanks so much for watching. We hope to see you in our next video.